For 300 years, no family had survived this house. The Otises bought it anyway. Oscar Wilde's The Canterville Ghost, 1887, is a masterpiece of comic supernatural fiction that inverts every expectation of the ghost story genre. Instead of vulnerable victims and a terrifying specter, Wilde gives us a ghost who becomes the victim of his own haunting. Sir Simon de Canterville has been perfecting his craft for 3 centuries, developing a repertoire of terrifying appearances with names like the Headless Earl and the Strangled Babe. English families have fled his presence in satisfying terror. But the Otis family represents a new world where practical Americans refuse to be impressed by aristocratic traditions, even supernatural ones. They treat the ghost as a pest problem rather than a terrifying phenomenon, offering cleaning products for his bloodstains and responding to his chains with lubricating oil. Wilde uses this comic clash of cultures to satirize both American practicality and English tradition, but beneath the humor lies a more serious meditation on guilt, exhaustion, and the possibility of redemption. Sir Simon's burden is not just his ghostly duty but his own long-ago murder of his wife, a sin for which he has never been forgiven and can never die without forgiveness. The story's heart belongs to Virginia Otis, the teenage daughter who sees past the nuisance to the suffering soul beneath. Her compassion achieves what terror could not, genuine connection that breaks the cycle of haunting. Wilde, famous for his wit, shows here that he could also write genuine feeling beneath the laughter. The Americans who would not be frightened. When Mr. Hiram B. Otis, the American minister to the court of St. James, purchased Canterville Chase from Lord Canterville, he was explicitly warned that the property was haunted. Lord Canterville himself had seen the ghost multiple times. His great-aunt had fainted at the apparition of a skeleton hand on her shoulder. No servant would stay after dark. The house came with a documented supernatural resident. Ghosts, how quaint. Americans don't scare easily, especially this family. Mr. Otis was entirely unimpressed. I come from a modern country, he declared, where we have everything that money can buy, and with all our spry young fellows painting the old world red, and carrying off your best actresses and prima donnas, I reckon that if there were such a thing as a ghost in Europe, we'd have it at home in a very short time in one of our public museums. The sale proceeded, and the Otis family moved in. The family consisted of Mr. Otis himself, practical and democratic, Mrs. Otis, once a famous New York belle and still strikingly lovely, their eldest son Washington, named after the father of his country, their beautiful daughter Virginia, a spirited 15-year-old, and their twin sons, known to everyone as the Stars and Stripes for their anarchic patriotism. It was a household built for confrontation with the supernatural. On their first evening, the family noticed a dull red stain on the floor near the fireplace. The housekeeper, Mrs. Umney, turned pale and whispered that it was blood, the blood of Lady Eleanor de Canterville, murdered by her husband Sir Simon in 1575, whose ghost had walked the house ever since. Washington Otis merely pulled out a bottle of Pinkerton's Champion Stain Remover, applied it to the spot, and watched the blood vanish. At that moment, a terrible clap of thunder shook the house, and Mrs. Umney fainted. The ghost had arrived, the ghost who could not frighten anyone. Sir Simon de Canterville appeared that very night, dragging his chains through the corridor at 1 in the morning, as he had done successfully for 3 centuries. The sound that had driven countless English families to madness or flight echoed through the ancient hallways. He expected screams, perhaps fainting, at minimum some satisfying terror. Instead, a door opened, and Mr. Otis appeared in his nightgown. 300 years of terror, and they offered him lubricating oil. "My dear sir," said the American calmly, "I really must insist on your oiling those chains. It is quite impossible to sleep with that racket going on. Here is a small bottle of the Tammany Rising Sun lubricator. 1 application will be effective, and further supplies are available at my store in New York." He placed the bottle on a nearby table, closed his door, and went back to bed. Sir Simon was so outraged that he threw the bottle to the floor and fled down the corridor, groaning in frustration. But worse was to come. The twin boys had rigged a jug of water above a doorway, and Sir Simon was thoroughly drenched while attempting a terrifying entrance. They pelted him with pillows when he appeared in phosphorescent armor. They constructed a fake ghost from a broomstick and a sheet, leaving it in his favorite corridor, which terrified Sir Simon himself when he encountered it. For the first time in 300 years, the ghost of Canterville Chase was not the scariest thing in the house. Night after night, Sir Simon tried his most proven appearances: the gaunt monk, the corpse snatcher, the headless earl, the suicide skeleton. Nothing worked. The Otis family saw through every illusion, ignored every clank, and remained resolutely unafraid. Mrs. Otis suggested he try Drive Doble's tincture for his supernatural moans. Washington offered to remove the bloodstain again when it mysteriously reappeared. The ghost was being treated as a household nuisance rather than a cosmic terror. The ghost who learned to suffer. Sir Simon de Canterville became a broken ghost. His pride was shattered, his craft was useless, his existence had become a torture worse than the one he had inflicted on others. He stopped trying to frighten the family and simply tried to avoid them. He slept during the day and crept about at night, hoping the twins would not find him. He had not felt this miserable since the day he died. 300 years without rest, and no one to hear his sorrow until she came. And he remembered that day with perfect clarity, not his death at the hands of Lady Eleanor's relatives, but the murder he had committed before it. He had killed his wife in a fit of jealous rage, strangled her in that very library, and hidden her body in the secret room where it still lay. For this crime, he had been executed 9 years later, and for this crime, he had been denied rest. The bloodstain that appeared and reappeared was her blood, crying out for justice he could not give. The ghost began to weep in the corridors, not for effect but from genuine despair. 3 centuries of haunting had been his punishment, but now even that role was denied him. He was a failure as a ghost, as he had been a failure as a husband. The weight of his sin pressed upon him, and he longed for the one thing no ghost is supposed to want: death. True death, final rest, the peace that had been denied him. Only Virginia Otis noticed his suffering. Alone among her family, she could see past the annoyance to the sadness beneath. She watched the ghost creep through shadows that once would have been his domain, and she felt something her practical American upbringing had not prepared her for: pity for a murderer, compassion for a ghost. The compassion that set him free. Virginia found Sir Simon in the old tapestry room, sitting by a moonlit window and looking more dejected than any ghost had a right to be. Instead of running, she sat down beside him and asked gently what was wrong. The ghost, surprised by kindness for the first time in centuries, told her everything: the murder, the execution, the curse, the endless walking, and now the humiliation of being unable to frighten mere children. She gave him what terror could not earn: compassion enough to set him free. "You have been very wicked," Virginia said after a long pause, "murdering your wife." Sir Simon admitted that this was true, but pointed out that it had been a question of family pride and that she had been a very poor cook. Virginia was not impressed by these excuses. But then she asked what he truly wanted, and his answer surprised her: he wanted to sleep. To truly sleep, the sleep of death, which is peace. There was a way, Sir Simon explained. Virginia could help him if she would pray for him, if she would weep for his sins, if she would enter the angel of death's garden and ask for mercy on his behalf. It would mean entering the space beyond life, and she might be frightened. Virginia thought of her fearless family and decided she would be at least as brave as they were. She took the ghost's withered hand and allowed him to lead her through a hidden door into darkness. Hours later, Virginia emerged from a secret panel, dusty but unharmed. She carried precious jewels, gifts, she said, from Sir Simon, and told her family that the ghost had finally found peace. They discovered a hidden room behind the panel where a skeleton lay chained to the wall, Lady Eleanor's body, hidden for 3 centuries. They buried both bodies properly, ghost and victim together, and the strange American family never saw Sir Simon again. But Virginia never forgot the lesson she learned in the Garden of Death: that love is stronger than fear, and that even murderers may deserve compassion.